My heels clicked softly against the marble floor as I approached the corner office, the late afternoon sun spilling across the skyline of downtown Chicago. From here, I could see the river glinting like a ribbon of silver, the city buzzing beneath me, unaware of the quiet storm I carried inside. I straightened the silk blouse that brushed my wrists, ran a finger along the edge of my neatly stacked papers, and took a deep breath. Everything looked perfect. Everything except the memory that still made my chest tighten. The ping of my phone broke the calm, a name flashing on the screen I hadn't seen in years. Ethan Crawford. My stomach lurched. Ethan, the man who had laughed at my ideas in the boardroom, mocked my work in front of everyone, and made me feel small when all I wanted was to prove myself. That mocking smirk, the dismissive tone, it still haunted me, tucked into the quiet corners of my memory. I stared out at the river, letting the sunlight warm my face, but inside, a familiar heat of anticipation and reckoning burned. I had come a long way from the girl who trembled under his gaze, who doubted herself in the mirror each morning before work. Now, everything had changed. And as I watched the phone screen flash again with his name, I allowed myself a tiny, ironic smile. Today, the past had finally caught up with him, but this time, I held the cards. I remember the first time I truly felt the sting of being underestimated. It was 5 years ago, and I was fresh out of business school, brimming with ideas and ambition. My first big presentation at Crawford & Company, Ethan's domain, was supposed to be my moment. I had spent weeks perfecting every slide, rehearsing every word until it rolled off my tongue like silk. But the moment I stood in that glass-walled conference room, Ethan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, that smirk playing across his face. "Really, Sarah?" he said, voice dripping with mockery. "You think this is going to work?" My cheeks burned. I could feel the eyes of the senior partners on me, weighing, judging, and waiting for me to fail. My hands shook as I tried to explain my strategy, the pitch I had poured my soul into. Every sentence felt fragile under his gaze. When I finished, he leaned forward, tapping his pen on the table, and delivered his verdict like a sentence. "Amateurish. I don't see how you're going to handle real clients with this." The room fell silent. The humiliation was sharp, a knife twisting inside my chest. I wanted to vanish, to sink through the polished floor and escape the sting of their laughter. Later that evening, curled up on my tiny apartment couch, I pulled out the envelope my grandmother had slipped into my bag before I left for the presentation. Inside was a note and a delicate silver bracelet engraved with the words, "Strength grows quietly. Let them see it when they least expect it." Her faith in me, unwavering and gentle, felt like a warm flame in the cold dark of my doubts. I clenched the bracelet, letting its weight remind me that I had a choice: shrink beneath his derision or rise beyond it. That night, I made a decision that would shape every move I made thereafter. I would prove him wrong, not by fighting him in that room, not by arguing, but by building something he couldn't touch, something he could never dismiss. Independence. Power. Respect earned on my own terms. And so, I left Crawford & Company quietly, my humiliation tucked under my sleeve, replaced with a fierce determination that no mocking tone could ever erase. That silver bracelet would become my talisman, a symbol of every late night, every risk, every small victory that would one day lead me back to him, but this time, in control. Leaving Crawford & Company felt like stepping off a cliff, but the silver bracelet on my wrist reminded me that I could fly. I threw myself into every opportunity, no matter how small. I took freelance projects, consulted for tiny startups, and slowly learned the pulse of the business world from the ground up. Nights blurred into mornings, the hum of my laptop and the faint scent of coffee my constant companions. Self-doubt whispered in the shadows, but I pressed on, driven by a vision Ethan couldn't see. It was during one of these late-night sessions at a quiet coffee shop that I met Margaret Hale, a seasoned marketing strategist who saw more in me than I saw in myself. She didn't just offer guidance. She became a mentor, pushing me to think bigger, to take calculated risks, and to trust my instincts. "Talent doesn't always knock politely," she said one evening, stirring her tea. "Sometimes, you have to carve a door for it." Her words stuck, echoing in every decision I made. The early days were brutal. Clients questioned my experience, colleagues doubted my expertise, and some nights I lay awake wondering if I had overestimated my own potential. But then came the first breakthrough, a struggling e-commerce brand she recommended me for. I poured everything into it, analyzing data, reshaping strategies, presenting solutions that were bold but meticulous. The client's success was my quiet victory, the first tangible proof that I could thrive without anyone's approval, especially Ethan's. More wins followed, each one a quiet step toward financial independence. My work became precise, respected, and increasingly influential. I built a small team of talented professionals who shared my vision and understood discretion. We operated quietly, under the radar of those who would underestimate us. Social media posts were modest, updates understated. I wanted no one to see the storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. Each new client, each profitable contract, was a building block in a career Ethan had once mocked. I learned the delicate balance of power, patience, and timing. I studied his moves from afar, noting every misstep, every arrogance-laden decision that gave me insight. While he believed I was struggling in obscurity, I was silently accumulating influence, developing strategies that would eventually place me in a position where he couldn't laugh at my work without consequences. Through it all, that silver bracelet remained on my wrist, a constant reminder of where I had started and the quiet strength that had grown from my humiliation. My journey wasn't flashy. It wasn't supposed to be. It was deliberate, painstaking, and invisible to those who had dismissed
me.
And yet, with every carefully planned step, the world I was quietly building was inching closer to the point where I would no longer be invisible. The girl Ethan had laughed at no longer existed. In her place stood someone patient, powerful, and poised, a woman who could finally write the rules of the game herself. And she was ready for the moment Ethan would have no choice but to face her, not as the underling he mocked, but as the force that now controlled his career. The morning Ethan walked into my office, he had no idea what was waiting for him. He expected the timid, struggling Sarah he remembered, the one who hesitated before speaking, whose ideas were dismissed with a smirk. He did not expect this. The moment he stepped through the door, he froze. My office was a testament to every late night, every small victory, every calculated risk that had brought me here. Expensive abstract art lined the walls, each piece selected with intention, symbolizing patience, growth, and silent triumph. My desk, sleek and organized, bore the faint aroma of polished wood and a single vase of fresh tulips, simple elegance, understated power. The panoramic view of Chicago's skyline stretched beyond the glass, a reminder of the heights I had reached. Ethan's eyes scanned the space, and I let the silence linger, stretching it like a taut string. He cleared his throat, perhaps expecting me to greet him nervously, to apologize for taking up space in the corporate world he had once monopolized. Instead, I sat, hands resting lightly on the desk, the silver bracelet glinting in the sunlight. "Sarah," he said finally, voice tight, uncertain. I didn't expect. You didn't expect me to be here, Ethan." I interrupted softly, letting the words hang. Not struggling, not failing, but thriving.
His jaw tightened.
I watched him struggle to reconcile the woman he remembered with the woman standing before him. I mean, congratulations. Congratulations? I echoed, voice calm, but laced with steel. Let me show you what thriving really looks like. I reached for the folder on my desk, the one he would have ignored if it were delivered by anyone else. Inside were reports, contracts, and strategic plans, not just my work, but the deals, partnerships, and promotions I now controlled, many of which directly affected him. I pointed to the projections, his current project, his team, his career trajectory, completely influenced by decisions I had orchestrated behind the scenes. His eyes widened as comprehension dawned. You control this? I allowed a small, ironic smile. I do. Every major decision on your current path, every move your career makes from here on out, it's no longer in your hands. You laughed at my work years ago, Ethan. Now, the work you laughed at determines your future. He swallowed, his usual arrogance evaporating, replaced by disbelief and a creeping, uncomfortable shame. I leaned back in my chair, letting him take it all in: the office, the art, the success, and the truth. I gave him a moment to feel the weight of every sneer he had cast my way, every dismissive glance, every public humiliation. Then, almost casually, I added, "I never needed your approval, Ethan. And now, ironically, you need mine." The room was heavy with tension, a quiet storm of realization and reversed power. Ethan's attempts to speak faltered under the weight of his new reality. He had mocked, belittled, and underestimated me, but I had endured, grown, and built a world in which he was now, for the first time, powerless. I closed the folder slowly, deliberately. The moment was complete. The power shift was total. And for the first time in my life, I saw him as he truly was: not a mentor, not an authority figure, but simply someone whose arrogance had blinded him to the quiet, unstoppable force that I had become. I leaned forward slightly, letting my voice carry calm authority, the kind that comes from years of preparation and quiet victories. "Ethan, I'm willing to help you navigate from here," I said. "But there are conditions, rules to ensure this doesn't become a repeat of the past." He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand, stopping him. "No interruptions. Listen first, then respond." The first condition was straightforward: accountability. Every decision you make now must be transparent. No shortcuts, no arrogance, no dismissing others' ideas. I watched his jaw tighten. He didn't like being told what to do, but that was the point. Power had shifted. Second, respect. This applies not only to your colleagues, but to everyone whose work intersects with yours. Your behavior in meetings, your emails, your tone, they all need to reflect professionalism. Mockery, dismissiveness, and condescension are no longer acceptable. I could see his mind racing, realizing that his old habits, ones he had relied on for years, would no longer serve him. Third, growth. You will pursue mentorship, and you will take it seriously. I will introduce you to people whose guidance is valuable. You will listen, learn, and implement. No excuses. The irony wasn't lost on me. He, who once ridiculed my hunger for learning, would now rely on guidance to survive in the very world he once controlled. Finally, reflection. Every week, you'll evaluate your progress, your mistakes, and your attitude. I want proof, not promises. Growth is visible only through action. I let the words hang. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was structure, clarity, and the opportunity for him to transform, if he chose to. I paused, letting the weight of each condition settle in. Ethan's face was pale, eyes wide, as he absorbed the reality of the new dynamic. I saw shame, disbelief, and perhaps the first flicker of respect. Then I added softly, almost warmly, "I'm giving you this chance because I know what it's like to be underestimated. I know what it's like to have someone mock your work and doubt your potential. You will not forget this lesson, Ethan, but you will also have the chance to learn from it." The room was heavy with tension, but not anger. I could feel the shift, not just in power, but in possibility. This was not about punishment. It was about correction, accountability, and the hard-earned wisdom that only experience could teach. I looked at him one last time, the silver bracelet catching the light on my wrist, a silent reminder of my journey. Remember, the world doesn't owe you respect. You earn it or you lose it. And right now, you're starting over. He nodded, hesitant, but I could see the wheels turning. He understood that he was no longer in charge, that the laughter he once threw at me now echoed as a quiet lesson he couldn't ignore. The power had shifted entirely, and I held it with grace, clarity, and firm compassion. Weeks passed, and I watched as Ethan slowly adapted to the new reality. The man who had once sneered at my ideas now hesitated before dismissing anyone, approached projects with careful thought, and, most surprisingly, asked for advice instead of arrogantly assuming he knew best. The lessons were taking root, subtle but undeniable. I reflected on my journey as I looked out over the same Chicago skyline from my office, the sunlight painting the buildings in shades of gold and rose. It had been years since that first mocking comment, years of struggle, sleepless nights, and relentless determination. Every setback had shaped me. Every moment of doubt had fueled the fire that now burned quietly but fiercely within me. The silver bracelet on my wrist caught the light, a reminder of the first words my grandmother had given me. Strength grows quietly. Let them see it when they least expect it. I traced the engraving and smiled. She had been right. My growth had been silent, patient, and powerful. The humiliation, the sneers, the sleepless nights, they had all led me here, to a place where I could rise without losing my integrity and still extend a hand to those willing to change. I thought about the people in my life who truly mattered now, mentors like Margaret, loyal team members, and the few friends who had celebrated my victories without envy. They were part of the world I had built, one that was grounded in respect, trust, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your worth. Ethan's transformation was a testament not just to my power, but to the lessons I had learned along the way: patience, perseverance, and the importance of boundaries. The irony of the situation was not lost on me. He had once controlled my life in the smallest, cruelest ways, and now, without malice, I had guided him toward growth. It was justice tempered with compassion, strength balanced with grace. I straightened in my chair and let out a breath, feeling both the weight of the past and the freedom of the present. The journey had been long, and the scars remained, but they no longer hurt. They reminded me of the woman I had become. Independent, powerful, and unshakable. And as I looked toward the horizon, I whispered softly to myself, a final affirmation of everything I had endured and accomplished. I rise not by breaking others, but by becoming unstoppable, strong, graceful, and entirely my own.